When Nintendo failed to acquire the license to make a video game based around the popular comic strip Popeye, they had two choices: they could sink or swim. Having been defeated in their attempts to expand into the North American arcade scene, and as a result being left with a large quantity of unsold Radarscope cabinets, work had already begun on converting these machines into something new. Not being allowed to use Popeye's likeness could have proved to be fatal. Instead, Nintendo chose to swim, or jump as the case would be. Nintendo President Hiroshi Yamauchi had selected then young industrial engineer Shigeru Miyamoto to design the replacement and appointed Nintendo's head engineer Gunpei Yokoi, known for the Game & Watch, the Control Pad and Game Boy, to supervise the project. They were even given a budget of $100,000 to develop the game. With the Popeye licensing attempt failing, there was nothing else they could do but adapt and embrace the opportunity to develop new characters that Nintendo themselves might be able to market and use in later games. Miyamoto came up with many characters and plot concepts, but they all varied too much from the traditional Popeye love triangle he wanted. It would be the first time a video game storyline would precede the game's programming. It would become Donkey Kong, a mistranslation that Miyamoto believed actually translated to stupid ape. So Bluto became a gorilla, Olive Oil the damsel in distress, and Popeye became Jumpman. A love triangle between an ape, a carpenter and his girlfriend was born, but more importantly, the public loved it, with Nintendo selling over 60,000 Donkey Kong machines in the first year alone and earning over $180 million. Another $100 million followed in the second year and remained Nintendo's top seller well into the summer of 1983. July of the same year saw the release of the Family Computer. It launched alongside 3 games, 3 ports of Nintendo's successful arcade hits: Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Jr. and Popeye. That's right, Nintendo did eventually get the license, even if Atari controlled exclusive rights for the UK and Ireland, and had a specially designed and manufactured Atari cabinet made for it. Nintendo's Famicom actually had a terrible start. A bad chipset caused a massive product recall and resulted in the replacement and reissue of the system with a brand new motherboard. Their no-nonsense recall meant the Famicom became known as a product you could trust, however. Popularity soared, and it fast went on to become the best-selling console in Japan. It only seemed logical to once again turn their sights on America. I mean, people love their arcade games, right? Surely they'd love it even more if they had the opportunity to play them at home. Nintendo began negotiations with Atari to release the Famicom in the US under the name Nintendo Advanced Video Game System. A deal was even set to be finalised and signed at 1983's Summer CES show. In June of that year, at that very show however, Atari witnessed their competitor Coleco demonstrating Donkey Kong in their Coleco Atom computer. It was both illegal and a violation of Atari's exclusive rights with Nintendo to publish the game. Ultimately, the deal would go nowhere, and that same year saw the oversaturated video game market of America crash and virtually disappear. Always the optimist, Nintendo decided they would release the system on their own, buoyed by the confidence that the Famicom had already sold a whopping 2.5 million units in Japan. In Donkey Kong, Jumpman died if he fell too far. Yokoi wasn't a fan of this and suggested to Miyamoto that the game's main character should be able to fall from anywhere. Unsure and questioning if this would make a good game or not, Miyamoto began designing a prototype for a new game in which the character could jump and bounce around. Both men immediately liked it, with Yokoi suggesting the ability to jump and combat enemies from below would work for a multiple floor setting. This proved a bit too easy, and the developers added the requirement for players to touch enemies after being flipped to defeat them. A sewer was picked as the game's location, as surely you couldn't fall further than that. Remember that character Nintendo might be able to use in another game? He'd look out of place in a sewer full of pipes, wouldn't he? Already wearing overalls and a fabulous moustache, it was decided the plumber would be a better vocation, and even introduced a second player by doing a palette swap of the first. Now, all they needed was a name. On the other side of the world, in the early 80s, Nintendo were renting a warehouse as their American headquarters. Struggling due to Radarscope's bad sales, they awaited Miyamoto's replacement Donkey Kong so the cabinets could be stripped down and fitted with the new game before being shipped around the US. The company was struggling and even went as far as to fall behind in its rent, something their landlord didn't appreciate. Sick of being messed around, he arrived angrily one day demanding payment then and there or they would lose the premises. A heated argument followed, but Nintendo convinced him their product would be a success, even going as far as to promise the rent would be paid in full soon. Their hot-headed, mustached landlord, Mario Segale, left, but he left his mark on his tenants. He quite resembled the character of their game, and what started as a joke or mockery eventually stuck. Donkey Kong's star, Jumpman, was renamed as Mario. When he heard it, Miyamoto also felt this would be more relatable to people than just playing Mr. Video, the character development name in Donkey Kong, or Jumpman as he was known when the game was released. But what about the name for the new game's second player? Miyamoto searched for the next most common Italian name after Mario and came up with Luigi, a name that happened to mean similar phonetically in Japanese. It was a sign, an omen, and the Mario brothers were born. Knocking over turtles from underneath in sewers and then running up to kick them while they're down is one thing, but Mario Brothers had its time in the sun and had already been released in the Atari. They needed a showstopper to wow the disgruntled, jaded American public and make them love video games once more, but more importantly, make them want to buy their Famicom console. Returning in June of 1985 to CES Summer Show, Nintendo unveiled their new console, now sporting a new case that was redesigned by Lance Barr. It was known as the Nintendo Entertainment System, with emphasis on entertainment and not video games. The machine itself was even cleverly named a control deck instead of console, and came with cartridges called game packs, not video games. It probably fooled nobody, but what it did do was change people's perceptions of video games in the home. These games didn't rely on artwork to dupe the unknowing public into simply buying a reworked clone of some other well-known game. With positive feedback, test systems were rolled out in New York City and surrounding areas in October, with the larger North American release in February of the following year. By September of 1986, the Nintendo Entertainment System was shipping nationwide and had 17 launch titles. One game amongst them really stood out though, and was on everyone's wish list. That game was Super Mario Bros. A sequel to 1983's arcade hit Mario Bros., the game was designed by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takushi Tezuka. A mere 8 people worked in the game, with Miyamoto designing the game world and a team of programmers and artists, turning those ideas into code, sprites, music and sound effects. The gameplay was originally to be completely different, and was based around a shooting mechanic with completely different controls. The desire to hold on to Mario's jumping ability from the previous game, however, resulted in this being dropped. Miyamoto was motivated to create a game where even someone who had never played it before could pick it up and gradually and naturally understand what they were doing. As they played it more freely, it would become their game. It would be kept simple, however, so that it could be created and released in time for the year-end shopping season. So the running gun stages were dropped. Mario could now defeat turtles by jumping on their backs. He could even change size, something that only came about because the levels around him were designed for the smaller Mario, with the intentions of making him bigger in time for release. It was then decided it would be fun to have Mario become bigger as a power-up. They just needed to discuss what to use. There was a fungi, red and white in colour, named the Manta Muscari, and when you eat them, make you feel as if you're growing in size, an effect that was also referenced and used in Alice in Wonderland. It was perfect, and even influenced the game's world being named the Mushroom Kingdom. The game's backstory or plot is actually a lot darker than people remember. Let's look at it word for word. One day, the kingdom of the peaceful mushroom people was invaded by the Koopa, a tribe of turtles famous for their black magic. The quiet, peace-loving mushroom people were turned into stones, bricks, and even field horsehair plants, and the mushroom kingdom fell into ruin. The only one who can undo the magic spell on the mushroom people and return them to their normal selves is the Princess Toadstool, the daughter of the Mushroom King. Unfortunately, she's presently in the hands of the great Koopa Turtle King. I let this sink in. The quiet, peace-loving mushroom people were turned into mere stones, bricks and even horsehair plants. Every one of those bricks you punch and then break is killing a defenceless Mushroom Kingdom inhabitant. Okay, the only one who can undo the magic spell on the mushroom people and return them to their normal selves is Princess Toadstool, and I'm no doctor, or bricklayer for that matter, but if something is broken into many pieces, its recovery chances have to be slim to none. Similarly, horse-haired plants, could these be piranha plants? At first you'd probably say no, and you'd be right. I mean, how could they be? They don't resemble horsehairs in any way, that's very true. And while putrid piranha plants, when killed in a later game, Super Paper Mario, do actually drop horsetails, this wasn't that game. But if you look up a picture of what a horsehair plant actually looks like online, you'll get an image of a white oval-shaped flower. Yes, you guessed it, Mario's power-up is yet another victim of black magic used by the Koopas. On a lighter note, the game turned out to be fabulous, and most of us have played through it several times, sadly forgetting about our poor fallen comrades, because the moment you start World 1-1, you are absolutely hooked. A 6-song musical score written by Koji Kondo enhances the stunning gameplay as you navigate through the 8 worlds broken into 4 levels each, with the end level of each world being set in a castle with a boss fight where the Mushroom Retainer, yup, he wasn't christened Toad until Mario 3, tells you your princess can't stay still long enough to be rescued and has swanned off to another castle. The game has many hidden secrets, from 1-ups, warp zones and even a minus world, or world -1 as it's also known, an unbeatable glitch level. This level is identical to worlds 2-2 and 7-2, but when you enter the warp zone at the end you are simply taken back to the start of the level and you remain trapped until all your lives are gone. Interestingly, even though the level is shown as -1, it's actually world 36-1, but isn't displayed because the tile for 36 in the game is a blank space. When released, Mario was praised the world over, with many people crediting it and the Nintendo Entertainment System for bringing the North American video game market out of its slump. Super Mario Bros. Would go on to receive many positive reviews and is regularly included in the list of best and most influential games ever. It was the best-selling game of all time for a single platform for roughly 3 decades, selling a massive 40 million units until the release of Wii Sports in 2006. Easily one of the most recognisable video game characters ever, Super Mario has stood the test of time and is as fun now as he was all those years ago. Sure, people have tried to replicate the formula and some have even come quite close, but no one has ever captured or reproduced that magic. Super Mario truly is a video game icon.